so many years. If they change the road or something, there's a detour, it's over. While I'm waiting for my eyes, I want to apologize for last week if any of you came. We weren't able to get the message out early enough. They had a shelter in place in the neighborhood. And so I guess all the ins and outs were blocked off. And so did some people come and then find out? Sorry about that. Okay, so tonight we're sheltering in place too, but it's around a text, so instead of a gun. Ah, thank you. And you are? Okay. First of all, we haven't had a chance to do any questions. Usually we have them at the end of the class, but then the end of the class goes right up to the end. So I was just wondering if anybody had any lingering questions that hadn't been addressed earlier, or you had them at the end of class and to get a chance to ask.
There's something about rice and rocks.
Rice and rocks. Okay. That's an embarrassing story that I guess I can tell. Okay. All right. Rice and rocks. Anything else? I know. Okay. Go ahead. John Muir. Okay. You know, I tried my glasses. I was looking for the John Muir paper and I couldn't find it. So here's what I do. I promise you next week I'll do the John Muir. What's that?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can you wait a week? Well, what I was doing, there was a wonderful passage by, do you all know who John Muir was? Okay. But I was using it to illustrate that a lot of people, both in the Buddhist tradition and other contemplative traditions, use nature as a meditation topic, but also as a meditation place. That a natural environment can be kind of like a temple or a monastery. And often, like the Chinese monasteries often are called lin, like Shaolin. And it's, meaning trees. So they would often use the natural space removed from other kinds of distractions. That's not to say there's not distractions in nature. Anybody who's been in nature realizes there can be a lot of distractions. Bugs, mosquitoes, birds, snakes, squirrels that steal your food and so forth, and then changes in weather. But they're different kind of distractions. They're sort of not the ones you generate, but they're the ones that are sort of ambient and allows you to relax your mind and contemplate some. So John Muir wasn't a Buddhist as far as I know, but really used nature as a way to watch his mind and watch his responses and I would say center himself in the world in a different way. And last week, it wasn't even last week, it was longer ago, 2-3 weeks ago, I mentioned that one of the very interesting things he did was he said usually in storms, he would just go into a cabin or his house and light a fire and just wait it out. But in this particular case, he decided to enter into the storm. So he climbed basically a 100-foot tree in the Sierras during this massive storm that was blowing in, and then sat there in the tree in the storm with all the wind and the rain and snow. It was pretty wintry, actually. And then after things settled, he came down. But he wrote a remarkable reflection on that experience, which is what she's asking about, and maybe I'll read it next week, because it's quite interesting. Anyway, so we got rice, rocks, and John Muir. Anything else? These are more requests than questions, but okay. So tonight we're on still in the Lively Encounters chapter, page 77. And tonight we'll finish up on this monk, Jer Chang. And in a sense, what this is getting at is, you'll notice that the word nature here is mentioned, but this is not referring to the natural world so much as what this text always refers to as one's fundamental nature. It's called banxing, or the essential nature, or sometimes translated as self-nature, zixing, and sometimes Buddha nature, or just the nature. And what it's important to understand what this is referring to. Why would self-nature, fundamental nature, Buddha nature, original nature be interchangeable? And it's simply referring to an innate or inherent capacity that all people have, all sentient beings, in fact, are said to have, that is full and complete, lacking nothing, and it is the actual sort of birthright that all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all sages, all awakening comes from. And it's really important to understand it because it's said to be inherent and intrinsic as opposed to outside. So this means the orientation towards realizing it is recovery rather than discovery, reaching out. And that's why you'll see him always talking about look within, don't look outside. He's referring to look within your own life, your own human experience to discover. And then it said that this nature doesn't increase and doesn't decrease, but at different times it's more accessible, clearer to us, and then other times it seems distant and murky. But it's not really distant or murky, it's just that the way we live our lives either brings it into focus or obscures it. So really you start thinking about what it is. It's not like it magically appears sometime or that you can pray for it to appear, but simply by cultivating your person, and by that I mean not just intellectually but psychologically, physically, emotionally, by cultivating your person, that cultivation, that refinement of the human reveals or removes the obscurity that covers it over. And I'm trying to find different ways to look at this. And so the whole emphasis in doing this, in this kind of cultivation, is essentially to really pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your situation, pay attention every movement of thought and emotion and feeling, impulse, habit. You're watching and watching all the time, and you don't get uptight about it. It's just, and this is one of the deeper meanings of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not simply focusing on one thing so that you can do it better. But this mindfulness has to do with almost a 360-degree awareness mindfulness. It's a total attention to everything that you're saying, thinking, and doing and feeling. Because if this is correct, then it's in that activity that awakening either manifest or its opposite, which are called the afflictions or klesha, or the knots, or the entanglements, clouds, confusion, and so forth. So you can see this text, which is really one of the most direct pointings to that, is very straightforward, and these encounters mirror that. So in this particular text, this monk he started out as a child, seeking to recover his spiritual essence, his spiritual nature. Probably, and it indicates that he went to a number of teachers in a number of places, all of which were probably instructive, but he still didn't get the sense that he was hitting the nail on the head with a hammer. Now, of course, I use these metaphors, but I realize that in Berkeley in 2017, not everybody even knows what a hammer is or ever hit a nail with a hammer. Have all of you hit nails with hammers? Okay, a few hands go up. Yeah, okay. So if you know when you're doing that, if you got to have it really straight, you have to hit it really direct, and you have to have the right nail and the right hammer. And even when you do it, you get halfway down, and then it bends and twists and whatnot, and you have to start over again unless you're really good at this. And what this monk is looking for, he's looking for a teacher and a teaching that really hits the nail on the head for him. He, in a sense, I think, represents anybody's search for awakening or spiritual connectivity, and that is this sense of a quest, a search, a longing that we have, but it's not crystal clear. We know what it isn't often, but it's hard to say what it is. And most of the time we spend our lives in a kind of penumbra, a sort of state where we're not really and totally engaged in what we're doing because it doesn't really connect or drive through, and yet we can't really escape from it because we can't step into something that's really directly more profound. And so we sort of hang between. It's like we kind of we're like living almost in two worlds simultaneously, and sometimes getting the worst of each. And so there's this feeling in the questing, and yet you can't give up. This is what's interesting. So the resolve is there, the intent is there, the urge is there to penetrate, to get through, and it keeps pushing, but often it's like you're in a forest and you can't quite figure out where the path is, and yet you know you keep moving, something can happen. So there's this tension that I think he's bringing to this. Now, he's heard that the Sixth Patriarch is really very direct and very skilled at helping people tune into this. I don't know if this makes sense to you. Certainly my life was a lot like spent like this. There was a lot of things I was doing. Now, it wasn't that I was doing them well or even that they were bad. Some of them were bad, but they just weren't delivering. There was this kind of feeling of a subtle, slight emptiness or meaninglessness on the fringe of everything I was doing. Even when it was sort of fun, right in the middle of that fun, there was still this little echo of, well, what's this really all about? So not everybody has that feeling. But if you have that feeling, it's easy to misinterpret it as despair or depression or disenchantment, but often it can be the beginnings of spiritual awakening. So this is really important to now it's not always that case. Sometimes it can be actual depression. But in the text, there's a series of steps, and one of the first steps towards awakening is a sort of disenchantment. Lon, what's the first one you remember from class? We went through our list. What was the first? Is it disenchantment? Yeah, disenchantment. And it's kind of like from disenchantment then comes from a dispassion, and that's the next stage, and you can think, oh my gosh, now I don't care about much. What used to be fun and exciting isn't. But again, if it's done in the spiritual way, these are the first two steps towards liberation. Then comes a kind of, is it calm? Calm. And the calm comes because in the dispassion and disenchantment, if it's done properly, you're letting go of those obstructions and obfuscations. And the result of letting go is that there's a little more light and joy that starts to come. And this is what's your first marker that this is actually a constructive dispassion and disenchantment, as opposed to just a clinical depression or even a kind of existential angst. So that's why at the beginning it's really important not only to have a text like this, but also have teachers or a community where this is really clear, so you can sound off those seemingly negative states that begin the way against states that are negative that are not the way. So this is really critical. Anyhow, so he's coming to the Sixth Patriarch, and he's asking, and you could see in his first question, I'm only intent on discovering my nature. That's what he says. So the Sixth Patriarch doesn't mess around. Other people come, I said earlier, they come to be affirmed in their seemingly awakened understanding, to get patted on the head, or they come to show off and struggle with the teacher, to have a kind of debate, or they come, just to sort of hang out and see if there's something magical going on. Maybe you can rub the crown of my head or give me an amulet, and that will get me there. But this monk is very straightforward. He just says, this is what I really want to do. So the Sixth Patriarch does not do what he usually does, is kind of pull or challenge or anything. He goes right to it. He asks what his last teacher taught him. His last teacher taught him a form of meditation, a contemplation, that still had the mark of seeking and attachment to it. And it was very subtle. But because there was still a mark of seeking something in the meditation exercise, he wasn't penetrating, he wasn't getting through. And what was interesting, the reason he wasn't, is because if you go back and understand the theory, there's nothing to get. See, this is, because there's nothing to get, then meditation is not about getting awakened or getting a special esoteric state or even having far out things happen to you. Although you've read about these, this is actually misleading. What meditation's really about is just stopping the mad-seeking mind in all its forms, even seeking enlightenment or altered states of consciousness. So this is really important to understand. And he wasn't seeing his nature because he was focusing on something he was going to get from this meditation that he was doing. And as a result, it actually obstructed him. The interesting thing is he knew it. He knew it was obstructing him. He knew it wasn't delivering. But again, I'm guessing that must have been frustrating, knowing it wasn't working, but still keeping at it, waiting for some opportunity. So when he meets the Sixth Patriarch, he's really ready to learn. And the Sixth Patriarch then on page 76 gives him a very, very interesting verse that just really helps him understand. And he's saying basically, if you're not thinking of not to see a single thing, not to know a single thing. In other words, he was repressing his mental faculties, thinking that he entered this state of not knowing and not being aware, that would be awakening. And the Sixth Patriarch saying that not knowing and not being aware is actually still an attachment. It's still a discursive use, and it's a repression of your sensibilities. So here's another theme I want to bring out because it came from the previous cultivator as well, which is this notion that, awakening or getting bodhi, and sometimes you see it represented in, movies, where people just go into this still, quiet, deep absorption where everything is forgotten. And then in the movie, the light starts to increase, and rays of light come down, and there's usually some music, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly they have it. You don't know what they have, but you can tell by the aura and the lights they got something. But often what the meditation really is about is nothing like that at all. And so when you're meditating properly, you have an acute, alert awareness, and at the same time, you're not setting up or grasping or attaching to any state, positive or negative. You're simply observing and watching. Even the most advanced texts, when they talk about meditation, they're very careful to say meditation doesn't lead to awakening. More, it just leads you to see how you're not. In other words, how you're using your mind to actually set up. It's a very, very different thing than thinking it leads to awakening. Meditation is not awakening and doesn't necessarily lead to awakening. It's just a tool to use to catch your mind unawakening, as it normally goes. And so what you're doing, for example, in our practice here in sitting, when you bring the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body into a concentrated form, you're basically bringing those sense organs, you're stilling those sense organs so you can watch and observe the mind as it's moving and activating, because once the mind moves, of course, works through the sense organs into the sensory world. Now, by pulling back from that, you're not cutting off the sensory world and saying that's awakening, nor are you trying to stop the process of observation and knowing and thinking that's awakening, but you're watching how it's working. And by watching how it's working, you can then get a handle on the mechanism as it moves. I don't know if this helps you think about meditation in a different way. If you stop the sensory awareness, you go into what's called dull emptiness. If you're seeking for something in the meditation practice, then you're going to miss the here and now. You're going to miss the movement of the mind as it's transforming and changing and creating the 10,000 things. So simply by just observing it, you can see how it is setting up, attaching, grasping, and so forth. And in that seeing, you are now in a position to not follow and be led, misled, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that helps a little. I can still see there's question marks, but the only thing I can say is with long practice, this starts to become clear. One of the things that happens with meditation is in that moment of just observing, you start to get a little sense that you could actually have some control over the sort of habitual, impulsive way that we mostly live, just in reaction to things. The other thing that happens is when it's done for a longer time, there's moments when you actually can feel a kind of calm that is different than any calm you had before. And it's just a calm like everything's just basically okay. There's no problem whatsoever. And there's a kind of contentment that just emanates from that doesn't have any object as its source of contentment, but just the contentment that comes from not wanting, not needing, not being anxious, not being frantic. And it's so natural, it's almost like, wow, what was that? But that ground of contentment or that ground of calm then becomes a source or a space that you can use as a marker to tell when the opposite's occurring. Not just in meditation, but when you're moving through the world. So there's that taste, there's a beginning taste of that contentment or that calm that comes. And when that comes, you have something now you can steer by that you weren't able to steer by before. So anyhow, he's coming in, he's getting instruction on this. You notice he doesn't get any instruction on meditation, which is very interesting, except what to do with his mind. It doesn't say he was teaching him how to sit or do anything in that way. And then when he has this understood it, he gave this verse. And he said, I've been attached to appearances. And appearances can be both inside and outside phenomena. I was clinging even to one thought of enlightenment. How could I rise from my previous confusion? So there he's really saying it. Even clinging to one thought of wanting awakening. My essential nature is the source of awakening, and it can navigate the turning, twisting flow. And now, had I not entered the patriarch's room, meaning the patriarch's space, but more the patriarch's direct teaching, I'd still be drifting between two extremes, either repressing, shutting down, or hungering and craving. Okay, so now we go to the last part where we'll probably finish tonight. One day, Chur Chang asked the master. So it means he stayed around for a while, because this is a later time. He said the Buddha expounded the teachings of the three vehicles, yet he spoke of the highest vehicle. Your disciple doesn't quite understand this. Could you explain it for me? What's that about? What's the question about? It's obviously not about cars, so vehicles. What are vehicles? Three vehicles. After I said that, everybody entered a very still contentment, and now I'm bothering you all. Vehicles? Okay, all right. Everybody's going to be polite. You all know, and then I say it, and you say, why is he saying it? We all know. Yes.
I can try.
Okay.
So the vehicle of Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, and the vehicle of the Bodhisattvas, and then the Buddha, the vehicle of the Buddha.
Okay, so, and one of them drives Mercedes, the other one has a Prius, and so vehicles are used as metaphors, but it's an interesting metaphor because it's a moving device. It's a device by which you move. It's not a rock, you cling to. So this is very different because if you want to say there's faith or there's some trust in this system of practice, it's simply that you take on and use a vehicle to see if it gets you anywhere. You don't get the vehicle and put it in the garage and sit and say, I'm here, I've arrived. I got my vehicle, it's great. The only reason for having a vehicle is to go from one place to another. So these are used as metaphors to say you go from confusion to awakening, or you go from afflictions to bodhi, or you go from misunderstanding to wisdom, or so forth. But all of the teachings are described in terms of vehicles as dynamic, moving mechanisms or devices to get from one place to another. So this is really, the dynamic aspect is really pretty interesting because it means at all times you're moving. You're moving. Even in stillness, you're moving. Okay, so this becomes very critical not to think, I'm a Buddhist, I took refuge at the triple jewel, I wear a thing around my neck and now I'm okay. It don't work that way. Now, if the thing you wear around your neck is a sutra, then you might open it up and look at it, and you might read it and ask what it's for. What is it for? What is a sutra for? Is it to bring good luck? I used to, when I was young in my religious background, I used to wear all kinds of things around my neck. And I think it was, people put them around my neck to the degree they thought I needed something. And it wasn't just to protect me, it was to subdue me or whatever. And I never understood what they were about. I wore them religiously, to use a pun, but I never understood what their purpose was. So I'm saying again, if you want to wear a sutra or something or a mantra around your neck, yeah, it's okay. It's actually less expensive than jewelry, and chances are nobody's going to steal it. But on the other hand, you might ask, if what I just mentioned before is a theory, then anything that you have would be to get you to move, to change, to transform in some way. It's a tool. A vehicle is like a tool. So here, these are represented by the Buddha saying, different people in different situations have different conditions that require different mechanisms to use. And so this is a broad sweep of saying there's some people, it's like what she called the Shravaka, which is really poorly translated as sound hearer vehicle. And all it means is that you rely on teachings and instructions. You need verbal, written, demonstrated instruction to figure out what to do. Just left to your own devices, you can't figure it out. So there's text, there's teachings, there's classes and instruction. The second vehicle is Pratyeka Buddha, which means those who awaken more or less on their own, not needing necessarily instructors or teachers, but their conditions, their spiritual roots are so deep that they can, in their life situation, deeply contemplate and observe things and see through it. They're able to catch it and see it for what it really is. These people are fun because they often, write poetry, and they often do very interesting things that catch your attention. Often it's said they're somewhat hermit-like, but you can be a hermit in Berkeley. You can be a hermit in Los Angeles. Hermit is a state of mind. It's not so much, the other way, you can be a total social freak out in the woods. Constantly tweeting, Facebooking with your thing, and sitting in the woods, or constantly thinking in your mind. You've created a metropolitan area in your mind when you're in the woods. Whereas a real hermit, no matter where they are, it's all the same. It's just all very still and quiet. Why is it still and quiet? Not because they plug their ears up or shut their eyes. It's because what they see and what they hear is not important. They just see it as fluff. And so if it's seen as fluff, it's like it's there, but it's not there. You know what I mean? Have you heard that experience? I won't go and get into detail how you might have had it. Sometimes it's with a conversation, or you go to where you went before where it wasn't fluff, and all of a sudden it's become fluff. Could be a party, it could be the mall. And all of a sudden you're in the mall, but you're a hermit. It's like, whoa, there's just nothing going on here that's got me. Now that could be that disenchantment and dispassion, but that's actually a good state to be in if you're a Pratyeka Buddha, because what it means is not that they've changed, but you've changed. Your desires and attachments have reduced, and therefore these things don't look so great anymore. And they don't sound so great anymore. Being a historian, I sometimes come across these old magazines. And then I have new magazines. I look at the old magazines and the ads for things in there, for the cars, the makeup, the clothes, from the 1890s and the early 1920s. You're going, whoa, that stuff is so stupid. How could anybody? And then you pick up 2017. Whoa, that looks good. I got to have it. It's like, but when you get to the Pratyeka mind, 2017 and 1890, it's all the same. These are just things. Their clothes, their food, their cars. We have a temporary identity with it, and then we pass on. We keep moving through in this sort of meaningless shuffle. So the Pratyeka Buddha can be in the woods or in a remote place, but they can also be right in the middle of the market square, the place. But they don't lose their calm. And they don't lose their calm because they're reciting a mantra and ignoring everything. They're not going, Om Tova, Om Tova, Om Tova. No, they're just like, it's not there. It's there, but it's not there. It's really quite wonderful. Anyhow, those are Pratyeka Buddhas. And then the Bodhisattvas is the vehicle for those who are cultivating, liberating and awakening themselves while they are cultivating and trying to liberate others. So they're in the midst of the world doing that work, without an end in sight. They're just constantly committed to this transformation activity. So these are called the three vehicles. And then the vehicle that's called the supreme vehicle, this is all taken from the lotus, is the Buddha vehicle, which is not a vehicle at all. So it's called a Buddha vehicle, but when you're in the state of Buddhahood, the vehicle is over. Now that doesn't mean you're not moving anymore. It just means you are in this state where you're not even having to use a vehicle because movement and stillness are one and the same. And because there's no attachment, you're totally engaged, and because of that mind, nothing moves or turns, but you're everywhere present and so forth. So, pretty complex stuff. But, you know, if you think about these as psychological states rather than categories, there's this being and that being, you could see at different moments, I could be a Shravaka because I'm listening, I'm reading something, I'm studying, I'm learning, and something turns in me in that way. There's times when I go in nature, either to the ocean or to the mountains or whatnot, or even sometimes in the mall where that disconnect just sort of kicks in. I go into neutral and everything just goes just still and empty. Or you're in the woods and nature and suddenly you just find yourself completely just immersed in the sounds and the feels of solitude, and then you can just feel the rise and fall of conditioned things. You just feel part of that natural order. So you could do that on your own, and there's times when you have this deep commitment of compassion and caring to get involved with the teaching and transforming and helping of others, at the same time realizing that you can only do that to a degree that you actually clear up your own trip. And so it's like, that's a bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas want to save living beings, but they realize, damn, if I could only save them without changing, but I can't, I got to change. Whoa, and they sort of screwed themselves into a contract when they make these vows. Living beings are boundless, I save them all. Yeah, good, and how are you going to do that? Give them a nap? No, you're going to have to change yourself first. Really? Oh, and so you're kind of locked in. And the more you change yourself, the better you are at helping others. And the more you try to help others, the more you realize I better change. Because you get stuck if you don't change. And so it's a really interesting, be careful of your vows. So anyways, he wants him to understand these different vehicles. But it seems to me that Chang is thinking about these more along the lines of these are divisions of consciousness or identity. These are they're Shravakas or Pratyeka Buddhas, and they look different and whatnot. And these are concrete formal identities. So here's his line. This passage, by the way, is to me one of the most telling and important of this whole text. What he just says here, the Master says, only pay attention to your own mind. Don't get entangled in the external form of Dharma. The Dharma does not have four different vehicles. It is people's minds that differ. Now, again, just those lines is, first of all, don't get entangled in the external form of Dharma, but rather get attention to the internal working of Dharma through your own nature. And he's really saying there aren't any real four vehicles at all. It's only people's minds that differ. And as their minds and potentials differ, there seems to be a vehicle that's corresponding. But a vehicle is only to get from one place to another. Once you're to the other place, the vehicle is no longer useful. And you know, this is the famous parable of the raft, where the Buddha says, suppose you're on this shore, and there's another shore. And this shore is very dangerous, it's not safe, but the other shore is very safe, but there's no ferry and there's no bridge. How do you get across? And the disciples said, well, you just grab whatever you can, tie some sticks together, bamboo and twine, and you get on that and just paddle your butt off to get to the other shore. And the Buddha says, very good. And then, you know, that's the Dharma, he says. Whatever you put together to get the other shore. Once you're on the other shore, what should you do with the Dharma? And he said, would it be wise to put it on your back and carry it around? He said, no. He said, get rid of it. And he says, right. So the Dharma doesn't really exist unless you're in a place where you need it to go from one place to another. And earlier in this text, it's very clear. He said, if you're not confused, there's no Dharma. Okay? Like, behind me are all these sutras and shastras. And that's a medicine case. And if you're sick and you need the medicine, you try to go and figure out what's the best one here. And usually, if there's a doctor in the house, a Dharma doctor, which is called a Dharma master, they will say, let's take your pulse. Oh, you're getting angry all the time. Man, you're really getting angry. Oh, okay, so let's look at, oh, here's one for you. And then somebody else says, like, you're totally distracted. You can't focus on anything for more than let's look at this one and contemplate. And they dispense the medicine in accord with that. They say, you could say a vehicle or you could say method. There's no 4 different medicines. It's people's minds or natures that differ. So whatever is appropriate is what the Dharma is. Learning through reading, listening, and reciting is the first one, the Shravaka. Okay? Awakening to Dharmas and understanding their meaning is the middle vehicle. Now this means on your own awakening and understanding things as they really are. So what happens generally is that these are never clear cut, even if we have elements in us, because there's moments when we do. Come on, all of you. You do something, maybe you go to a funeral or you go to a wedding, let's just take 2 extremes, and you see things as they really are. And then you go, whoa, okay. But the next day, maybe it evaporates. All right, and you forget about it and you get into that state again. Remind me of a cartoon. The man and woman are standing at the altar with the minister about to take their vows. And the minister says, first let me read the minutes from your last marriages. Before we start this. Okay. Anyhow, kind of appropriate, maybe not. So then, cultivating according to the teachings is the great vehicle. To completely fathom the 10,000 things, all the while remaining undefiled by anything, detached from appearances, not grasping at all, this is the highest vehicle. So you see, the highest vehicle that he's describing is a state where you're seeing the nature of everything, and at the same time you're not grasping or attaching or moved by them. It doesn't mean you don't see them, you actually see them, you're in the midst of them, you're working in and through and with them, but you're undefiled means you don't leave your center. You don't think, I need that, or you don't think, I'm afraid of that. It's simply because you're not seeking and attaching that they don't affect you in any way, but that makes you more effective. Because you're not moved by these. Detached from appearances, while in the midst of appearances, not grasping at all, is the highest vehicle. He didn't describe this as Buddha Bodhisattva. He described it as a state of consciousness, a state of being. That's why sometimes I say this is not necessarily religious in the sense that you think of religion, that there's these particular saints or deities or whatnot. He's describing a state of mind that anybody can have without attaching a name or a tag or label to it. Vehicles, and this is one of my favorite lines, vehicles are methods of practice, not subjects for debate. Wow. Now, this has a history to it because, of course, in this text you can see there's much of that going on. People are coming in and holding positions and arguing from that position, trying to win the debate or whatnot. And he is very, very clearly saying all of what you call Buddhism, small vehicle, great vehicle, high vehicle, low vehicle, this vehicle, that school, that sect, they're all methods of practice, appropriate to whoever hopefully would be taking them up, but they're not subjects for debate. And if you think they're subjects of debate, you're not taking them up as vehicles. You're using them as sledgehammers to knock people down. And what a silly thing to do with medicine. If you think about it. I mean, I'm trying to push this a little bit because it's very easy to have arguments about this. You know, you go home and you've taken up some Buddhist practice and you get an argument with somebody over it. You know, it's like, how can you eat that turkey? Which is what I did. I became a vegetarian and went home for Thanksgiving, and I immediately taught everybody by debating and arguing about eating turkeys. And it was totally the wrong situation at the wrong time. It was the first time everybody had been together for a long time. My mother was really looking to. It was during the Vietnam War, and one brother-in-law was in the military, and one was long hair and draft dodger, and everybody's at the table. And she was looking for, Jesus, if the family's been together for so long, let's just sit and have an old-fashioned good meal. And all of a sudden, and like, how can we eat a turkey? It's, So, not skillful, not appropriate, and turning it into a subject for debate. Now, if I just sat there and said, no, I'm going to pass this time on the turkey, well, I'm just changing my habits a little bit, and da-da-da, and I was cool about it, and like somebody might have said, like what? And I might have gone into it a little bit, but instead, I stood up and, basically on the podium, stopped a nice family meal, and began to lecture everybody. Of course, being pure and virtuous, 100%, I had all the ground in the world to lecture everybody, and they were all taught and transformed. Everybody went away from that a vegetarian. No. Nobody went away vegetarian. Next thing my father did, because now I had taken this precept against intoxicants, and so he said, so everybody's together, let's have a family toast to our health, and well, I'm not going to toast, because I don't, I'll tell you another story about that later. Anyhow, so he says, cultivate yourself, don't ask me at all times, your own essential nature itself truly as it is. It is truly as it is at all times. This being the case, if it doesn't seem that way, it's because we're not paying attention to it. But it's not because it's left us or it's gone. Okay, this thing, he's saying, cultivate yourself, don't ask me. I mean, this is really wonderful. He's saying, I have given you all I can give you. I pointed the way to you, and now don't lean on me any further, because that is now substituting cultivating yourself for reliance on me. If this would be very unkind if the Sixth Patriarch could do more than he's done and withholds it. And it would be unkind if he said this to him and he wasn't ready to leave. You see, you can't take this as saying, oh, he's saying don't ask anybody about the Dharma. No, he's saying at this particular time, in this situation, that's the appropriate medicine for this individual. Don't ask me anymore. It's over. But that doesn't mean you don't ask and you don't respond. Somebody asks you a question, they're really sincere and troubled, and you say, don't ask me, because I read in the Sixth Patriarch. No. Again, you have to use the medicine appropriately. Okay. Chung bowed in gratitude, served his master for the rest of his life. Now, there's two ways to interpret this. Anybody want to have a try now that you're all kind of into it? Serve the master for his rest of his life. Means? What could that mean?
Literally stuck around and certainty.
Literally stuck around, but didn't ask anymore. Just was the quiet butler. Like, do you want? Don't ask. Okay. Any other meanings for this?
Repay the kindness of the teacher's teachings.
By teaching?
Repay the kindness by
Staying around and taking care of them.
Until the teacher passes.
Okay, any other possible interpretations?
Follow his teaching.
What?
Follow his teaching and do.
He followed his teaching. Okay? In other words, in serving the master, he was serving not that particular individual, but the teaching itself. Right? In other words, he was now in the position to do what the master was doing, not in slavish imitation, but at the heart of it. Going out, teaching and transforming appropriately accordingly, which was to serve the master. Anybody want else? I'm just saying, there might not be more. Just see, or there might be possible new ones. Anything?
I think serving the master is cultivating his own essential nature, working on that. Mm-hmm.
This is very interesting. Did everybody hear that serving the master might mean that he was actually doing what he was instructed to do at the beginning, only pay attention to your own original mind. And so he was in fact serving the master. But he was both master and disciple then in this relationship when you're paying attention only to your mind. What this means is, first of all, even if you're messed up, you have to pay attention to your own mind. Sorry. Because if you don't pay attention, I don't pay attention to my own mind, my mess up is not going to go away. And the more I look at your messed up minds, the less is mine going to go away. Okay? So this is really important. Because you say, well, I can't pay attention to my own mind, I'm not a Buddha yet. Forget it. Every Buddha got to be a Buddha by paying attention to their own mind, no matter how messed up it was. Because that's the only ground you can go to get this awakening. This is really vital. But it also means paying attention to that true mind, that true heart, that is in the middle of that false mind. And so you're doing a kind of discerning. The Avatamsaka says, truth and falseness interlink and mingle. Within the ordinary mind, we find the Buddha mind. So this is really the challenge, because you're going into your everyday ordinary mind, and you're not saying, my everyday ordinary mind is a Buddha. Potentially it is. But it has to be rubbed and polished and brought out. At the same time, you can't say, I'm going to go to the temple and find the Buddha mind. because it's not there. This is the only temple. This temple is a metaphor. It's like a mnemonic device to remind you to look within. So if you turn this into the place and not your own mind, it's great. You know, you're here, it's not bad, but nothing's going to happen. It's like cooking sand hoping to get rice. Okay? So this is really, really important, because some people say, I don't want to pay attention to my mind. It's a very messy place. I don't like my mind. It's really messed up. And when I do, I see all my bad habits and faults and whatnot. It's much easier and better to look at everybody else's. I'm really, really crystal clear when I do that. But the problem is, that doesn't clear up your own mind. Moreover, because your own mind is not cleared up, when you tell people about what you see, they don't listen. They don't really actually clear up their own minds because you scolded them or pointed it out. So this is very, very interesting how you do it. But to understand that the Buddha mind and the ordinary mind are the same mind, just functioning differently, that gives you something to work with. It's very creative if you think about it artistically. Wow, there is no other place. The Buddha, the Bodhisattva, that mind is my being. It's my person. And whatever state it's in now is because I'm just not, working with it properly. You can see how you get a sort of artistic, creative thing going on in here. So this is really at the heart, I think, of what's going on tonight. I told some stories this week that some of you heard, so I didn't expect anybody else to be here except group, and now somebody heard the story. But let me just, I can tell a couple to illustrate maybe some of this. What he's pointing to here is a sort of brutally honest self-awareness and observation. It's not that you get all tied up in knots and guilty and shameful and remorseful and beat yourself in this way or that way for what you're discovering as we go into our mind. Nor is it as easy as just simply formally following an external set of rules or guidelines. And so I was explaining when I first began cultivating with my teacher, I tended to either extreme. I tended to sort of try to repress my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, and thinking by repressing them, holding them down, I would be pure, that they wouldn't arise, and I could keep them in abeyance that way. I could sort of basically still them through pushing them down. And sometimes that meant denial, and other times it meant just kind of gritting one's teeth and hoping they'd go away if I just didn't let them. And the other thing was that, if I just do the externals, if I just follow the rules and behave and go along with the rituals and everything like that, then I'm okay. And I would go back and forth, and like the monk here, they never really worked. And there's, again, where my teacher came in is really important, because when I would go to either one of these modes, he would be there to push back a little bit, to guide and instruct. And I want to explain, too, that this isn't just the teacher who does it. The texts are very clear about this. You can see, for example, I'm just going to quote this, from page 73, the earlier part, where the person was trying to repress their feelings and emotions and their senses, to sort of think, if I steal my senses, then I'll have that kind of gung fu. And in that line, he says, you don't need to leave the realm of senses to leap into the Buddha's realm. Remember, we did that 2 weeks ago. And that was like, okay, so you can't just repress the senses. In fact, you need them because they're valuable data. Okay, then you have this one kind of sinking in. You've had others who simply recite it over and over again, 3,000 times for 10 years, hoping that would do, which is the formalistic. If I do this, I repeat this 100,000 times, this will somehow, not magically, but in a very efficacious way, bring about something. And the Sixth Patriarch says, no, that doesn't work either. So there's an actual term for that. It's called Shila Bhadra Paramata. And it means a slavish attention to rituals and devotions with the idea that those alone will lead to awakening and liberation. It's not saying that they're not good or necessary, but thinking that they're sufficient to do it without changing the heart and mind and without cleansing the klesha. So the ultimate is you use those to get at and corral the klesha to get at them more deeper. Okay, so the story I'll tell, so you guys have heard it before, just ignore it, but it's kind of illustrative. It's about carrots. I'm going to tell the carrot story. So at the beginning, for me, when I was beginning, Heng Shui and I both, dealing with a matter of food was the first gate to go through. It wasn't the dhyanas and meditation and whatnot was, and you think, oh, wow, simple. What's enough food? You know, we're eating simple food. You're supposed to eat enough food to sustain your body to cultivate the way. Too much, you know, and too little won't work. So finding that middle, why is it so hard? Why was it so hard for us to find the middle? Well, me, I'll speak for myself, to find the middle when it comes to food. Oh, come on. So the line between need and greed, between, you know, what's enough, and then what is giving me comfort with my anxiety or blah, blah, blah. And it's a very thin line sometimes. And so if you're really watching what you're eating, you're watching your mind, and you're saying, I want to catch my mind when it starts to move out of greed rather than just basic need. Man, it is fast. You know, it is fast. You think some of these athletes are fast? The mind that moves that way is super fast. And before you know it, you've gulped on 3 things that had nothing to do with need. And so I'm trying to figure this out, and then it was also how much, what kind, and so forth. So when Heng Shui and I were cultivating, we were down to 1 meal a day, and in that 1 meal a day, we found if we did it just right, it was more than enough to make it through the next 24 hours. If it was too little, because all night long you would be dreaming of food. And if it was too much, then you couldn't cultivate because you're always falling asleep and feeling overweight and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so trying to find that middle way. So here's a story. So I thought, okay, one way I can do it is just get the rules down. Tell me what's the right, how much. You know, so then it was about what size bowl. So there's a little bowl. It's like baby bear, mama bear, and papa bear. You have a little bowl, you have a middle bowl, and you have a big bowl. And so you have to, I was trying to think what bowl. If I get a real small bowl, then it might not be enough. But if I've got a real big bowl, it might be too much if I'm going to just eating 1 bowl a day. And then when I got the little bowl, it wasn't enough, so then I pushed the food down, pack it in. And so, you know, I'm going around like this, but thinking if I could just get it down. For example, if I was just given the Bodhisattva menu, okay, for the next year, here's your daily menu. You know, like they do with people in the hospital, they just give you a menu and go, oh, yeah, okay. You know, it's medicine, right? So when you're cultivating, it's medicine too. So I thought, okay, just give me the menu, please. There was no menu. Because every day it depended on what people offered you. This makes it really hard. Because on days when they offer you, let us say, cardboard food, it's very easy to eat simply, right? Plain rice, vegetables, and water. You're not going to go, whoa, you know, I want another sprout. Not even with butter or salt. Just, no, you don't. You very, very quickly you figure out where that middle way is. They bring chocolate cake. That's a different story. So they bring the chocolate cake and you're going, well, okay. But you say, oh, but if it just, I wouldn't be fair to not receive their offering fully if I didn't really receive their offering. So I'm going to take a full offering because I'm a field of blessings. So I want them to have more blessings. So I bring that cake in. And then you think, oh my gosh, and if I don't eat it, it'll go to waste. It'll be thrown away. So I'm going to practice frugal charity by eating the cake. And that's the Bodhisattva path. You do what others don't want to do. You stuff that cake in. So this is what goes on in your mind, you know, and you're thinking, how petty. And of course, anybody with common sense would say, look at your mind and say, what are you doing? No, it all makes sense. You see, so here's the matter of carrots. So we're out cultivating on the road, and the master comes out, and we have a little picnic lunch, and the lay people that day bring carrots, steamed carrots with, you know, whatever that green stuff you sprinkle on top, you know, pretty tasty. And so I heard the master say earlier that carrots, for a cultivator, is really packed with a lot of energy. He said, they fed carrots to the war horses of China so they could march for 7 days without eating. Cultivators do not want to be so supercharged. Because you're supercharged like that, your mind is just going to be filled with thoughts of lust and craving and fighting and competition, you know, okay. So they bring the carrots, and I'm thinking, oh, the war horses of China. I'm not going to be a war horse. So I take out a couple carrots, and I'm eating my couple carrots, and the master's looking at me and going, what are you doing? I thought, oh, maybe it was too much. He says, eat up. Eat these carrots up. My gosh, how can you cultivate with no energy? Wow. What? Stupid. Oh, okay. So I fill my bowl, eat all the carrots and it was okay. I thought, okay, so note, don't make this mistake again. Eat lots of carrots. So, I'm ready. 5 or 6 months later, the master comes out again, and it's the same lay people, and she's made another great dish of these carrots. And so I'm thinking, oh yeah, don't make a mistake again, eat lots of carrots. So, sit down, we do the meal offering, and I started to scoop the carrots in my bowl. The master says, what are you doing? I'm eating carrots. He says, how can you cultivate the way eating so many carrots? Don't you know the war horses of China ate carrots? Are you going to war? Are you bowing to the Buddha and trying to get rid of yourself? Are you inflating yourself? What are you? How stupid? I go, but you told me. And he said, I told you what? I said, well, 5 months ago you were here. You told me eat a lot of carrots, and now you tell me not to eat a lot of carrots. What's the rule? He said, what's the rule? The rule is if it's the Tao, advance. If it's not, the Tao, retreat. Huh? So what's the Tao? Could you tell me what the Tao is? And he says, the Tao is right under your feet. Huh? The Tao is here and now. It's not 5 months ago, and it's not tomorrow. I was still I was struggling with it. He said, whoa, you guys are really thick. Okay. He said, 5 months ago, what time of the year was it? I said, it was like December, January. And you're cultivating outside. The temperature was 40, 50 degrees. It was cold and rainy. Your body was in a cold, yin state. You needed energy. You needed nutrition to hold you steady and constant. Eating a lot of carrots then was a very good thing to do because, you had to power up to get through the cold. Oh, he says, so what is it now? May. What's the temperature? 75. Oh, you mean I don't need so much fuel? He says, no, you should eat plain greens and some rice now because that's appropriate now. Then it was just right because it's cold. Too much now because it's hot. It would be making the same mistake. Do you get it? And so I'm not going to make that mistake again, And so I'm trying to get this right, and all of a sudden I realized, wow, pay attention to your mind and your body and your senses. I was going formal rules. If I could just get the formal rules down, I would be right. And he's saying, no, the Tao is flexible. My middle way is not your middle way. The middle way is not a set of rules. It means what's appropriate in each situation to keep you centered. And keeping you centered means a sensitivity not to, I feel more centered if I really have another slice of that cake. I think that'll make me. No, because already that calculation is off-center. So what I'm saying is you can fool yourself a little bit, but inside you know. And as you tune into that and you get to know it a little better and better, actually you're sort of just doing what's just right. So the funny part about this was, so he did this, I was embarrassed. Because at that time I was really trying to, really do it right. So every time I got corrected with a mistake, I was really, it wasn't just humbling, it was like a little stung, right? And especially if a bunch of lay people were around, right? So you're thinking, oh, we're out here, we're cultivating, we're monks now, and we have a little bit of wisdom, and the master says, what are you doing, you stupid kids? It's like, well, don't say that so loud. They're not going to look at me like I have a halo or something. Come on, give me a little face. So what I decided to do, this was the next big mistake. In these things, you notice where there's an exchange between the student and teacher, and then the student says, I got it. And then the student gives a verse, right, to show that he got it. So, we had this one, how do we have it? Jertung suddenly realized the essential nature of the wisdoms and presented a verse of his own. Okay? So I knew this text, sort of, and I thought, okay, he's humiliated me in front of these lay people. I really blew it. but now I'm going to recite a verse of my own because I got the wisdom now. So I came up with this spontaneously. Here's my verse. I said, eat too much, you'll fatten up. Eat too little and you'll fade away. Not too much, not too little. That's the middle way. Wow. Yeah, I thought, whoa. All right. And the master just turns. And I said, no. And the lay people, okay, they turned. They thought it might have been good. And I'm saying, Hung Sure, translate it. He didn't understand. Translate it in Chinese. And Hung Sure, and Sherpa says, no need. And then as the master's walking away, and this goes to the line here, vehicles, including poems, are methods of practice, not subjects for debate. Because I was sort of like, I could debate a little bit here with him. So he says, I have a verse as he's walking away. And he gives the verse, he says, 说得好，说得妙，没有修行，没有道. Oh, it's beautiful, it rhymes. And I'm thinking, that's my confirmation verse. He's actually saying, little ting ears, now seeing the way, shanzai, shanzai, or something, because I don't understand the Chinese. And the lay people are laughing like this, and they all get in the car and drive away. I said, Hung Sure, what is it? He said, well, I said, no, translate, what does it mean? He said, well, it's not very flattering. What? He said, well, 说得好，说得妙 means you can speak well, you can speak wonderfully. And then I said, yeah, that's what I did, right? Then he said, but the last two lines kind of kick it up. I said, what do you mean? It says, but if you don't really cultivate, it's not the way. 没有修行，没有道. If you don't really practice, you don't have any Tao. And it's like, psh. Down went my enlightenment verse in my state. So I share that with you because I made a mistake of formally going. I made a mistake of repressing. It wasn't that. And then I made a mistake on top of that. Instead of just listening clearly and taking it in, I wanted to debate my teacher and show that. And so like 3 strikes within a very short period of time of how not to do it. So I'll tell the rice and the rock next time. Any questions or whatnot? For those of you who heard the story, I'm sorry to do it again, but it did fit the text pretty well tonight. Any comments, questions, anything to ask? Okay. Announcements? That's a cool poster.
Yeah.
Wow.
Teachers want me to make an announcement. Okay, so we have a couple activities over the summertime that people want to sign up for. First, we have a retreat in Oregon called Buddha Root Farm. That'll be the first week of July. So if you want to sign up, it's on oregon.berkeleymonastery.org. It's out in the forest.
Can they climb trees during storms?
Probably no storm. It's like probably the best time to go to Oregon. It's the only kind of couple of weeks it's like not raining there. The people who have been there, there's actually quite a few people who have been here. You can ask them questions about how it's like. It's a very nice, cushy nature environment. And Reverend Hung Sure will be lecturing on the Purifying Practices chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. So if people are interested, you can come ask any of the UDC and myself, or the monks, or some of the lay people who've been around for a while. They have.
And even though it's the wilderness, it's not infinitely expansive in terms of the number of people, so it fills up quickly, and then
then you go on a waiting list.
What's the max you can?
I think it's something like 80 people, right? Are you shooting like 80?
You should ask the people who are cooking. It might be more like they'd be 40, but 80.
Well, I think we definitely maxed around 80. But
Actually, we're already in the 70s.
we're already in the 70s? Okay, so you better sign up real fast if you want to go. So that's the first week of July. The second week of July, there is a Guanyin retreat at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. Doug Powers, people know, he's also teaches the Buddhism for the Modern Mind class here. And that will be at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. You can sign up at...
That's before or after Oregon?
Right after.
Okay.
That'll be at drbux, there's an X there, .org. You can find the sign up for that. Following that, we have a work week at our local, near the City of 10,000 Buddhas, Sudana Center. We have a new retreat center there to prepare for. There's another retreat. We have a nice poster too. It's called, I can't say the actual name, Irigare meets Nagarjuna.
Sort of.
Sort of. Yeah, and so she's a French feminist philosopher, and he's a Buddhist spiritual master, very important to Gajna Bodhisattva. He's taught. He wrote extensively Buddhist, a lot of Buddhist texts that formed, you could say, the basis of much of the Buddhist tradition in India, as well as what brought over to China. And so, the retreat will be on looking at these two different, the Western and the Eastern, you could say, or the Buddhist and these ideas, to look at how we can use the teachings to address modern kind of issues in modern times. This will be done within a fairly monastic environment. It will be led by Dharma Master Heng Chi, who is the most senior bhikshuni in DRBA, and she might actually she is one of the most senior, if not the most senior, Western nun in the world probably. And then the second is Doug Powers. So if you're interested, is you can sign up. Same place, drbux.org, and that's going to be the fourth week.
Neither of them are actually going to be there. So if you're thinking of meeting Nagarjuna or Gari, they won't be there.
They won't be there. Who knows? Yeah, but we'll be studying some of their texts, and it should be really interesting. So again, please sign up early if you want to come. The spaces are all pretty limited, given it's a small retreat center in Ukiah. So okay.
Also, there's still openings if people are interested in doing something more at length. The Bachelor Arts program at DRBU and the Master of Arts in Buddhist Classics, we're still editing and reviewing students who want to come in, and that'll be starting a new class in the fall. So those of you who have the time and space to pursue that, you can look online or look at the catalog and see what's available. Some of the students in the class here are here tonight. When they should be doing their papers, but cool, that's good. Okay, anything else? Yes?
Marty, so the coming Sunday is the Basin
Oh
Buddha
yeah, that's another announcement.
celebration in CBD.
Oh,
Would you like to share with us your first experience of bathing the Buddha?
my first experience of bathing the Buddha?
Wow.
Remember?
I probably remember, but first you have to understand the Buddha doesn't need to be bathed. The Buddha's already pretty clean, so it's obviously symbolic about bathing someone else. Anyhow, I won't go into, but where is it happening? Here and at the city, or?
Yeah, it's going to be at the 10,000 Buddhas Sunday morning. So if people are interested, you can go up to the 10,000 Buddhas this Sunday. We'll also be having a Bathing the Buddha ceremony here on Saturday, May 6th. Saturday, May 6th, starting at 9 a.m. So we'll also have usually it's a little baby Buddha image that points up and down, and then you bathe the Buddha, and it represents, of course, bathing.
Well, yeah,
nature
it's
inside.
actually one of those rituals or ceremonies that's really easy to get a feeling for, because it involves water, it involves, the chanting is wonderful, the chanting that goes back, it's a lovely tune, and it's a community thing. But in doing that, generally, quite a few people, myself, and I wasn't into it at all when I first did it, it's actually a very powerful experience, because there's something about it when you realize that it's symbolic, that you're cleansing yourself. It's almost like you are giving birth to something, this inherent nature. And so, although it's symbolic, and if you don't see it as like, oh, I'm bathing the Buddha, but I'm actually making a statement about, I want to turn around and become something different. And so it's symbolically the cleansing, and this is used across traditions of using water. It can be very powerful, and it's a very simple thing to do. There's a wonderful expression in a Confucian text. It says this: the sage king had a bathtub, and on his bathtub it was engraved, bathe yourself today, bathe yourself every day, renew yourself today, day after day, renew yourself. And it was sort of a remembrance that in the bathing of the body is a sense of just getting the mind back every day. No matter where you're going, you just start it over and bring it back again. So this is one that's pretty easy to get into, regardless of your religious background or whatnot. So, and there's always good vegetarian food.
That's true. Usually good vegetarian food.
And then you can practice eating carrots just in the right amount.
That's the right.
Okay, good enough. We'll do the transference in English. We're getting to the end of the class. Tonight's the last night, really, of our April class, and then we'll probably have 2 more in May, or about 2 more or 3? 2 more. So 2 more Friday nights before we break for the summer break. We have a commencement we have to do.
May 12th is the last one.
May what?
12th.
May 12th will be our last class, so we have 2 more classes before the summer. Okay, you want to?
Okay.
Every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share these roots of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless night break the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise.
Bow in respect to the 3 jewels.